Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the Mets of New York town. Oh, the butcher and the baker and the people on the streets, where do they go? To meet the Mets! Oh, they're hollering, they're cheering, and they're jumping in their seats.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome to another Mets Spring Training Talk live right here on the channel. Got my boy here, Chris, with us today, as well as we get past this holiday weekend and straight into spring training. They had their first full workout yesterday. Everybody's there. Pitchers, catchers, position players, minor league player. Everybody is there, and we have a ton of talk about. And we are ready to get with the new logo going on. So, Chris, how you doing, buddy? What's up?
All smiles here. Everything is great. Got the new logo up. Fresh new video today talking about the latest signings. We'll talk about them here today as well in the first topic. And Ji-Man Choi and Luke Voigt. A lot of cool things happening on the channel. Over 500 subscribers. I definitely appreciate the support. Everyone in the chat rocking with us. It's a blast. Thank you all for the support. Let's go Mets. Spring training vibes are upon us. We got the nice little palm trees on the graphic. We're transitioning from Hot Stove Lives to Spring Training Talk Lives, and I couldn't be happier. Let's go Mets. This is going to be a great discussion.
Absolutely. Spring training brings hope to a lot of fan bases, and even though we didn't have the offseason that we all thought we could have had, there's still guys out there, before we get into the topic, there's still guys out there that, a lot of people are starting to push the narrative of Jordan Montgomery, where maybe the Mets might do a late push for Jordan Montgomery, just because of the fact that his probably long-term deal worth close to $200 million is probably not going to happen. And a lot of the teams that were probably in on him are probably out on him now. And I do wonder if David Stearns would, make a push for Jordan Montgomery. Blake Snell is out because of the qualifying offer and the draft picks. That's just not a smart move in my opinion. But Jordan Montgomery doesn't have anything attached except for money. So before we get into the topics, Chris, what about a Jordan Montgomery? Because it seems like the DH situation is going to be the guys we're going to talk about in a little bit, and Vientos or possibly DJ Stewart. So do you think the Mets might make a late push for Jordan Montgomery, maybe to bolster that rotation a little bit?
At this point, my confidence is not high on it. I mean, I guess it's a wait and see scenario for all these guys now with teams and different suitors. I mean, the situation applies to Jordan Montgomery, Blake Snell, like you said, although he's a little bit less attractive option because of that qualifying offer and all that compensation you had to give up. JD Martinez is still out there for anyone's taking. I think the Mets are pretty much made it known that JD Martinez isn't going to be an option, although you never know. Stranger things have happened, but it's really just shocking at this point that all three of those guys are still out there on the market, coupled to the fact that you also have Cody Bellinger out there. I'm trying to see how these forces are going against each other, being the agents and the players versus these teams that are still in the market for these players. Like, how are those forces going to battle out with each other, and who's going to be the last, party standing? Because we are here close to live action spring training. We got games coming up in a couple of days, and these players are still unsigned. This is absolutely unheard of, minus maybe in that sort of lockout scenario. This is absolutely unheard of. So, I got no idea. Am I banking on the fact that the Mets are going to pull the trigger on any one of these guys still on the market? No. Do I think that the price comes down to, in comparison to what they originally had been hoping for? Yes, but is it going to come low enough to the ground that the Mets are going to bite? Now, let's not forget the Mets also have a lot of tax penalty to go along with any sort of money they dish out from here and, to any free agent. So $13 million signing or $14 million signing is not going to be $13-14 million with that tax. It's going to be upwards of $20-25 million, whatever that tax calculation is. A lot of people still aren't really comprehending that. They're not understanding that. And that does take into sort of it takes a large sort of chunk of my confidence out when I know that, right? If it was something where the teams and the Mets were just waiting and it was going to be one price fits all and what the price is set is what you pay, that's a whole different story. But I'm not so confident right now with this whole situation. I think the Mets could be buyers at the deadline. I think it's a lot more likely we'll see additions at the deadline rather than here in the late goings of this offseason. So that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, and we talked about this many times that it's a first half situation for the Mets. It's a give and take here with all the 1-year contracts that they put together on this team. They give themselves options. If they're good and they're in the hunt at the deadline, they'll make trades to be buyers. If not, they'll be big sellers, and it gives them options. And it's hard to blame David Stearns in that situation when he's giving himself options. It's a smart move because you're not going to handcuff your whole organization for one season when you could make a lot of noise either as a buyer or a seller. And what you were talking about with a lot of these players still there, guess who's the agent of almost all of these big names? Scott Boras. And I think that's a conflict of interest. I think it hurts the players because of the fact that he can't lie to a team because what is he going to say? Oh, this agent says something else about this player? No, because he is the agent. If he says something good for one player, he might hurt his other client. And I just don't understand how Major League Baseball or most sports allows this. I think they should have a cap on how many players they can have. But because I think it's a real problem. I think, you're going to see it next year with Juan Soto and Pete Alonso, both Scott Boras clients. You don't think he's going to use every leverage he has for each one of those guys towards the Mets? And we all know the Mets are going to go after both of them, and it's going to cause many problems. And I think he's going to leverage it. And, I wouldn't be surprised Scott Boras is going to use the Mets for one of those players to get a massive contract that nobody's thinking of for one of those players. And maybe the Mets will match it. Maybe they won't. But that's what Scott Boras is going to do. He's going to leverage the Mets because it's a perfect scenario. As Scott Boras knows that the Mets are going to be going after Juan Soto and trying to keep Pete Alonso. And what's a better way to get that price up is to scare the Mets a little bit into one of those guys or both of those guys not becoming New York Mets. And I think that's something that is happening now already that we're going to see. And it's happened, in years past. But this is, put a light on it because, you got the Cy Young Award winner. You got one of the best pitchers in the postseason last year still on the market. And it's not like every team in baseball, I don't care who you are, you can have a really good rotation and still can use one of those guys. And I just don't get it. The bats that are available, the JD Martinez's of the world, Eddie Rosario's, Belts, fine. Not everybody might need that bat, but everybody could use pitching. And I just don't get what Scott Boras, I understand the asking price in the beginning is going to be high, but at some point you're going to have to budge a little bit. And either he's lying to his client saying, oh, I know I'm going to get this for you. And the player's just going to be like, all right, whatever. But this is also going to cause a problem because what if these guys get injured because they didn't start spring training on time? What if they sign with a team a week from now or 2 weeks from now? You're already 2 weeks into spring training. You're behind on all your drills. You're behind on your new team, and it can cause an injury because you started late. Of course, these guys are working out, but the problem is that somebody's going to take the risk, but are you the team that's going to take that risk knowing that they're not starting when everybody else is starting? That's what I worry about.
And so, I mean, the MLB collective, just like teams and owners and front offices have a sort of option here as we move forward. Maybe not so much this offseason, although we're seeing it right now with the conversation that we're currently having on this stream, but also next offseason when you mentioned two big free agents, and there's going to be a whole plethora more under the umbrella of Scott Boras, these teams and organizations are going to be forced to come to a decision. Do we boycott what Scott Boras is doing? And we've already seen it a little bit in terms of not giving in to his demands and his games and his tactics. Now, like you said, and a lot of people here in the chat are saying there should be sort of deadlines here as to when these free agents can sign. I'm not really sure how feasible that is. I think the overall concept of that definitely makes sense, but I'm not sure how you are supposed to limit that in a, I guess, fair manner, right?
Yeah, the
But
union's not going to go
nonetheless,
for it.
yeah, exactly. But the thing is that they have an option moving forward, right? In terms of not letting this guy leverage them and utilize them. And like you said, that is a tactic to utilize the Mets to get a higher price. But how many teams, after you go to the New York Mets, how many teams are going to go out there and say, oh, we'll beat that offer? Not many. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, if you look at next year, right? The teams that are probably going to go after Soto, right? The Giants, the Yankees, the Mets. I
right.
probably doubt any other team in the East, in the NL East. Maybe a surprise team here and there, but you don't think the Dodgers are going to go after him. I think they kind of spent enough money. I think they're really set with their team, but it's like there's not a lot of teams, for those guys. How many teams are going to be for Pete Alonso? Maybe one or two other teams, excuse me. We know about the Cubs, maybe the Yankees, because they're going to have a hole at first base after Rizzo. Maybe they go after him, but there's not a lot of teams. But I know one thing, Scott Boras is going to go back to the Mets as like a final last stand saying, hey, if you match it or go higher, we'll be a Met. So that's why I'm not worried, but it's very weird to me because, like, if there's not going to be a deadline, I mean, wasn't the lockout part of the reason why they had the lockout was because there was some kind of collusion going on with the owners not wanting to pay big contracts, and the players saying, they are colluding, and the owners said they're not, and it became a big issue a couple of years ago, and it's starting to be the same way again. And you start to worry getting closer and closer to the CBA breaking up, and now they got to make a new one, and it might cause another lockout because this is the issue that we're having. And it still is amazing to me that, one of the better hitters in baseball last year was JD Martinez still out there. You got a Cy Young and a guy who's shown how well he pitched in the postseason, and teams can use them. I mean, our team can use them, but I just don't understand it. But let's get into the real issues that the Mets are probably going to be talking about this spring training with the two guys that the Mets just signed. Ji-Man Choi to a split contract. If you don't know what that means, it's basically, if he makes the Major League roster, he gets it fully guaranteed. If he doesn't make the opening day roster, he can get an outright release, and then he can join another team. Luke Voigt did sign a minor league deal, so you know how that one works. He could have stepped the minor leagues if he doesn't make the open day roster, or he can probably ask for his release as well. So, Chris, I know this is not exciting. Luke Voigt kind of interests me a little bit because he's shown what he can do. I know it was in 2020, but he shows that he has that power. He seems like he got a promise to try to get a chance to win that DH job, or maybe that last bench job, and that's something that we're going to talk about with DJ Stewart. We talked about this on Hot Stove a couple of weeks ago. DJ Stewart isn't a guarantee in this 26-man roster. And, with Choi and Voigt, these guys are first basemen, right? So I don't think both of them are going to make the team. It's probably going to be one of them. Either they're going to win a DH spot, or they're going to get that DJ Stewart spot on the bench. But what if Vientos actually wins the third base job? Because he looks really good. You saw that footwork that he fixed on those videos. He looks really good with his footwork. That was his big problem at third base. But it can make a lot more issues. I mean, good issues if Vientos wins that third base job, because now we have a lot to talk about, because Luke Voigt could be the DH and DJ Stewart and Choi can be the ones fighting out for that last bench spot. So, Chris, let me ask you, in this scenario, do you think any of these two guys are going to make the team, or is it just going to be status quo with Vientos, DJ Stewart, and Beatty in their rightful positions?
You can't see a scenario where Beatty is not the opening day starting third baseman. I'm going to stick to that point. I've said it time and time again this offseason. I'll continue to say that unless they prove me wrong otherwise, the Mets, that is, and they put Vientos there at third base. I can't see it. I think Beatty is your third baseman and Vientos is your DH. And both these guys, Ji-Man Choi, Luke Voit, in addition to DJ Stewart, like you mentioned, are vying for that fourth bench spot. Now, the 3 bench spots that I think are pretty much set in stone, right? Your fourth outfielder is going to be Tyrone Taylor. He doesn't really have any minor league options, so he can definitely refuse to go to the minor leagues if they were to option him, but they're not going to. They traded for him for a reason, right? The Milwaukee guy, he's not going anywhere. Omar Narvaez is that left-handed hitter, backup catcher. For Francisco Alvarez, you have another lefty in Joey Wendell, super utility man. So those guys, those three guys are locked into the bench. Who is going to be this fourth bench guy? Now, you have 2 lefties. You have 4 bench spots available. You have 1 righty, 2 lefties locked in right now. Are you going to commit that fourth bench spot to a third lefty off the bench, or are you going to open up that sort of interpretation and see if Luke Voit maybe can win that job? We all know how Luke Voit's Mets tenure ended last season in AAA Syracuse. Got brought in after he was released from Milwaukee, had 37 games under his belt, 14 home runs, over 1,000 OPS. The Mets did not want to bring him up during the September call-ups, and he basically opted out of his contract and said, listen, I'm just going to take the rest of the season off with my family and just go enjoy that if you're not calling me up. So he doesn't seem in the mindset to want to go back down to the minor leagues and sort of prove himself again and wait for that call up. Although, if Vientos struggles, we'll see how big of a leash that he has at the DH spot. And if the Mets are winning games, we'll see how long the Mets will run with Vientos. Maybe Luke Voit knows that, and he's willing to go down to the minor leagues for a month or two and sort of wait and see what happens with Vientos in a bulk sort of sample size. But nonetheless, I really do think with DJ Stewart having 1 minor league option available, there's no harm, no foul in terms of giving Luke Voit a shot, especially if he does well in spring training. And then if Luke Voit does well, okay, great, we'll ride with him. If he fizzles out like Luke Voit has in the past, then you DFA him, you bring DJ Stewart back up, and all is well, because that's what you were originally going to start with come opening day. Now, I will say, I do agree with Carlos in the chat. I'd rather have Ji-Man Choi in all facets of the game than Luke Voit. I don't know why. I know the power might be a little bit slightly in Luke Voit's favor, but everything else in terms of the advanced metrics, maybe a little bit more defensive sort of capabilities as well. Both guys are really bad defenders. I'm not going to lie to you, but nonetheless, Ji-Man Choi seems a little bit more capable out there at that first base spot. I would rather have Ji-Man Choi, but the thing is that Luke Voit's a righty. Like, are the Mets going to value the righty over those 2 lefties? And that's the only sort of conversation we're having here in general with giving DJ Stewart that sort of minor league option and sending him back to the minor leagues, is because he is a lefty. Yeah. So, like I said, that's where I see it. I think Ji-Man Choi, definitely with that sample size that he has to go along with him from 2018 to 2022, pretty decent numbers, not going to wow you by any stretch of the imagination, but he has been a very competent bench bat for a major league team before, and he can continue to do so here. I just don't know what they're going to prioritize. Lefties, righties, who knows? This is going to be fun, because this is something we talked about in that stream last Wednesday about this roster spot exactly going to be up for competition. Luke Voit.
And this is before Voit and Choi.
This was before, exactly. This is before, which is a great point and an important point. And you add a guy like Luke Voit back into the picture, who's already played under Carlos Mendoza, has familiarity there. Did you see the quote from Carlos Mendoza saying he's certainly going to be in the mix? He said, in the mix. What does in the mix mean? That it's gonna be so fun to see how it plays out.
I truly think they love the fact that Luke Voit has that power. And I do believe that I don't know how much they believe in DJ Stewart. I always thought they were gonna try to put a little bit of competition in that spot with him, because I like Ji-Man Choi, because I seen when he did it, a few years back, and he's a solid bench player, right? Luke Voit, I feel like, needs to play more often to show that power. I don't think he could sit on the bench and just pop up in the 8th inning when we need a ball over the wall. I don't know if he's that type of guy. that's why it's going to be very interesting because we had this big conversation with the roster projections that we had about a week and a half ago. We were like, DJ Stewart isn't a guarantee with that roster spot, and that was the only spot that we were talking about position player wise. And now they added these two guys. Both can play first base, both can be backup first baseman. That's not the issue. Are they, like you said, are they going to have three lefties on their bench with just Tyrone Taylor as the only guy as the righty? Or so it's like I don't know what their priority. We don't know. Like everything can be solved if DJ Stewart just outperforms everybody, and then there's no question. But like you said, DJ Stewart has an option. It might not be how good he performs. If they really want to keep Luke Voit on this roster, they're probably going to put him on the 26 man, leave DJ Stewart there, and see what happens. Depending on if Vientos finds a way to outperform Beatty in spring, different story that we're talking about. Because what do you do with Vientos at that point? Are you going to just DH him and leave Voit on the bench? So there's options, and it's not a bad thing to have other options. They're just not great options. So these are a lot of low risk, high reward situations. It's just that, are they prioritizing defense? Not really, because both of these guys are not good defensively. Are they looking at power? Because that's Luke Voit. So it's going to be very, very interesting. And, it relates to a lot of things. The Mets are still shoving videos of Vientos down our throats with fielding drills. They showed a little bit of Beatty in the cages in batting practice. So I don't know what's the plan. They say there is a third base competition. If that's true, great. I'd rather have that. The best man wins. I'm okay with that, even though I like to have Beatty there because I think he's a little bit more sure-handed than Vientos. But Vientos been working his ass off, and I love players that are going to put every ounce of energy into their workouts and to get better. And I feel like Vientos has been doing that, knowing that he's heard all the rumors and the whispers of him not being good defensively. And he hears that, and I guarantee you around the organization, he hears that in the facility. So third base is going to determine a lot, I think, because if Beatty wins the job, there's a pretty good chance Vientos is going to have the DH job, and then it's just a matter of who got that final spot on the bench, and it's between these three guys. I don't know. I mean, it is very interesting, but so you do think it's going to be Beatty at third base, Vientos DH, and then just that bench spot open for these three guys, Choi, Voit, and Stewart?
Yeah, I think that's what it's going to be. And like I said, I mean, DJ Stewart, like we know the option, it sucks for DJ Stewart because like Daniel's saying, like he only produced a little bit of a sample size last season, albeit it was a pretty decent run, right? He showed a lot of promise, right? Defensively, I won't bank on DJ Stewart being a top option defensively. We all know that his frame is not conducive to that, but he showed that he's competent out there. And also he showed a little bit of pop too in that bat. Funny enough, as a little bit of a side nugget here with Ji-Man Choi, I looked at his Baseball Savant page. We all know the traditional stats say what they say. He hit 163 in 39 games, split time between the Padres and the Pirates. OPS was like 624, only 6 home runs, 13 RBIs. I dropped this all in my video here earlier this morning. If you missed it, go check it out after you're done watching the stream. But I went on his Baseball Savant page, and you'd be amazed to see how like decent his advanced stats go in terms of the hitting category. Like doesn't chase any sort of outside pitches, doesn't chase pitches in general with his chase percentage. So he knows the strike zone pretty well. He hits the ball hard. He's pretty decent in terms of the exit velocity, barrel percentage, all that good stuff. And then we still get to see the stats play out as they do. I know that he was injured, but I think a lot of people are underrating Ji-Man Choi as a potential depth piece. I'm just hoping, because I don't think Ji-Man Choi is going to win that job, because I'm telling you, it's either going to come down to DJ Stewart or perhaps Luke Voit, depending on that righty-lefty sort of preference for the Mets. But if Ji-Man Choi accepts that sort of demotion back to AAA Syracuse, that is a very underrated depth piece that the Mets don't really have a lot of at first base, right? And this is why we're having this whole conversation in general. Yes, Daniel, he has a lot of plate discipline. That's where I'm trying to get at. Absolutely. And that's what I like about Ji-Man Choi. But the Mets don't really have, outside of Pete Alonso, they don't have much first base depth either. This is
No.
why a guy like G-Man Choi or Luke Voit this signing makes sense, because especially if Mark Vientos, like you're saying, is winning that third base job, well, he's not going to be able to fill in on an off day for Pete Alonso or when Pete Alonso goes to DH at first base. So if he doesn't, then who's going to? And someone needs to be that guy off the bench. And it could very well be Luke Voit. We'll see. I mean, he had a pretty decent run last season in AAA Syracuse. I know AAA numbers are what they are. He had an abysmal time in Milwaukee. He had like a 528 OPS, no home runs. And if you're adding Luke Voit to a roster, it's probably because you think that he can get you some home runs and show that power. But no home runs in Milwaukee. I know it's a short sample size, 22 games, something like that. It is what it is. And at the end of the day, this is really the only offensive roster spot on the depth chart that's going to be open for grabs. I'm just really curious because now we have something to watch during spring training, right? Now it's not like, oh, we know the roster is going to be set. Why are these guys still here? Like a Zach Short. We have something to actually watch now. So that competition at least is a little bit fun in my eyes as a Mets fan.
Yeah, and obviously a couple of bullpen spots that could be available, but position player wise, that's a spot to look at, and it's going to be very interesting. And listen, it's always intriguing. I can't wait to go down there. As soon as I get down there, I'm going to be all into the roster, and when they hand out the rosters, all the players on that got invites, and all the guys on the backfields that might get an invite later on in spring training. It's going to be a lot. But I wonder if Alex Ramirez is going to get a good look. I know that was our surprise guy. What if they're like, what if Alex Ramirez shows up? He's been falling down that top prospect list over the last couple of years. Not really, his strikeouts still remain high, but he's building up into a bigger body. I was saying, in our roster projections that, he's getting, his body is building like a Ronnie Mauricio, who was a twig, and now he's building muscle. And they showed him early, I think it was the other day on SNY, and he's bulked up. And maybe that's going to help him a little bit more. He's always showing some power, but doesn't hit for average, strikes out a lot, but he can play all three outfield positions. And I do wonder if he has a good spring, would you want him over DJ Stewart? I mean, it's one of the Mets organizational prospects over DJ Stewart, who only really had a good late August into September. I really think that's going to be interesting to look at as well. Speaking of the outfield, the new outfield alignment, Starlin Marte said he could play 170 games. He looks healthy. He says that he's healthy, and I feel like I believe him because last year he was kind of quiet about it, right? I think he didn't start spring training on time. He started a little late, still recovering from the groin surgeries. I think that he just came back too fast, and he probably re-aggravated it and just never got started the way he usually is, the Starlin Marte of 2022. I think Starlin Marte is going to surprise a lot of Met fans this year. I'm not saying he's going to have a 2022 Starlin Marte year, but if he can back close to 300, give us 15 to 20 home runs, and just be above average and stay on the field, I think that can make the lineup so much better because we're not really talking about Starlin Marte. We know about the 1 through 4. We know about Nimmo. We know about Lindor. We know about McNeil. We know about Alonso. After that is where you need somebody to step up. You need a Vientos to step up. You need a Marte to come back. You need somebody, an Alvarez. You need one more guy because if you get 5 guys in that lineup out of the 9 to be producers of your lineup, the other 4 you can kind of mess with a little bit. You don't need tremendous numbers. You just need guys to do their job. You need them to be, even if they're a little under average at best. I think having a 1 through 5 is a hell of a lot better than just counting on your top 4 and trying to figure out what's going to be your last 5 batters in your lineup. So with the new outfield alignment, we know Nimmo's playing left, Bader's playing center field. I do like that Stearns called Nimmo, and he said this, that he called him and said, hey, how do you feel about moving to left field to keep you healthy? And we all know Nimmo's history with injuries, not the last couple of years, but in his career, he's been often injured. Nimmo's gotten better defensively because of the analytics. It's only going to make him extremely a better outfielder to move him to left field, not just help, but make him an all-star, great left fielder. And I think that's only going to make him better because you don't have to worry about the two gaps. You only got to worry about the left center gap now and down the line. Obviously, I think it's going to keep him healthy. I think it's going to make him even a better outfielder. And we know how good Bader is in center field if he remains healthy. And listen, center field and right field, they're question marks, right? I'm not expecting much from Bader. He's probably going to bat ninth in the lineup. He is a clutch performer. He was the best Yankee performer in the playoffs a couple of years ago. He's a guy that, when healthy, he works the count. He gets those clutch hits. He's great defensively. And then you got to look at right field with Marte. We just talked about his health. If they're healthy, you got one of the best defensive outfielders in baseball. And Chris, I want to know, how do you feel about this alignment right now? Obviously, health matters, but you only look at what's on paper, right? You always go into the projections as this is what I think they can do if healthy. How do you feel about the outfield alignment?
There's nothing really to say. I wouldn't care if Brandon Nimmo stayed at center field. It doesn't really matter to me. Like center field, left field, right field, whatever. This is the best Mets alignment defensively that they could possibly throw out there on paper, right? Harrison Bader's a stud. Probably, I'm not going to lie to you, the best center fielder in the game defensively when he's healthy, right? Defensively, that is, because we all know, we don't know we're getting out of him offensively. But nonetheless, this is fine. Brandon Nimmo, great job, respectful by David Stearns to sort of say, hey, listen, this is what we're thinking. To keep you healthy and keep you at the top of your game, we'll shift you over, maybe not so much of a workload, not so much of a range you have to cover out there. This is great, especially up the middle defense, which David Stearns definitely takes pride in, right? You have a solid foundation up the middle. We'll see about McNeil on second base. Obviously, he's been solid there in the past. No complaints really there. Lindor, we all know, Gold Glove caliber shortstop. And then we also have Gold Glove caliber center fielder now in Harrison Bader. Now, like I said, this is sort of a situation where Marte is definitely healthy, right? You can see he's a little bit rejuvenated. He's got the rest. Makes sense. But things change over the course of 162. And I'm curious to see how the Mets actually distribute Marte's playing time in terms of him maybe transitioning from an everyday type player to maybe something a little less, just to keep him healthy and keep him fresh should the Mets make a run down the stretch of the season into the postseason. Maybe you keep Marte healthy, the same sort of game plan that you have for Nimmo. You're going to have to probably deploy ×2 for Starling Marte, which makes Tyrone Taylor's job a whole lot more important coming off the bench, which also makes potentially another outfielder outside of Tyrone Taylor's job all the more important, whether it's Alex Ramirez, like you said, or Mr. Drew Gilbert coming up. You never know. That makes their job a whole lot more important as well, to keep it down and keep it locked in while these guys are getting rest. So like I said, yeah, absolutely makes sense. I like the alignment. And I like this defensively. We'll see if we can get anything out of Harrison Bader in the lineup. Call it a win-win scenario. All we need him to do is to get on base. I don't care how you do it. Get on base, flip that lineup over, and play an elite center field, and the money will be worth it. Let's not forget we paid this guy 1 year, $10 million, right? I mean, this is not like a 1 year minor league deal for a guy who's coming off of a very, sluggish 2023 campaign. We paid him pretty top dollar for this prove-it-year deal. And that's all it is, because we can honestly assume he's not going to be here next year with the outfield talent that's coming up in Drew Gilbert. They're talking about Mr. Jet Williams playing some split time in center field as well this spring training. So this is a lot of moving parts in the outfield that the Mets have. And Harrison Bader really at this juncture is just a sort of placeholder. I want to be kind and say a placeholder, but he's a good one nonetheless. Defensively, he's elite. We all know that. I like it. We paid top dollar for Brandon Nimmo when he hit the free agent market as a center fielder because there was scarce center field options that year. He got his money. He got his bag. Homegrown Met. Keep him in there. At this point, it doesn't matter where he plays, left field, center field. I don't care. He can even DH for all I care if he's hitting home runs. I like this. Keep him fresh. The main thing here, Rob, is the Mets need health. They need to maintain health.
Correct.
By any stretch of the imagination, no matter how you do it, we need to keep these guys fresh. So there's going to be a lot of platooning, for better or for worse, because I hate platooning. But if this is what you have to do with these guys that have injury histories, then so be it, especially at the beginning of the season until they find their groove, which gets back to your whole point of players that are still in the market that may not be signing and are missing some spring training action. That's only going to hurt them when the season comes around with this whole, injury bug. Let's hope it doesn't, because I think someone in the chat here said it. John, shout out John for always tuning into these streams. There's another bench bat, not to segue into outfield to the remaining market, but Mr. Gio Urshela still out there as well. And if we circle back around to what the Mets are going to do with Vientos, Gio Urshela, I've been very critical of the Mets and me being a proponent of the Mets not to sign him, but he could check a couple of boxes for the New York Mets here at a cheap price point as well. So we'll see. I like it. Brandon Nimmo, we'll see if he's even our leadoff hitter. There's some lineup situations that the Mets also have to sort of take into consideration if they don't go sign another bat, because we don't have the protection from Pete Alonso that we would have liked. With Soler coming off the board, JD Martinez coming off the board, this lineup is going to have to be played around with a little bit, right? So we'll see.
Yeah, it's funny because somebody brought it up on X. I forgot who it was. I didn't even retweet it like an idiot. I should have. So I would have gave credit to that person. But people are talking about Harrison Bader being a leadoff hitter because of his working accounts, his speed, and what that does. That pushes the lineup back. You can bat Nimmo second, then you can bat Lindor third, you can bat Alonso fourth, and then now you have options. You got the Alvarez's, the McNeils, you got extra Marte, you got a couple of guys, batting 5, 6, or 7. That makes it a little bit deeper of a lineup. And I wonder if they might do that because if Nimmo's going to show more power and he's going to hurt his average a little bit and his strikeouts might go up a little bit, I'm okay with that, but he can't be the leadoff hitter, in my opinion. I don't know if you agree with that because, there were some people thinking Lindor should do it. I don't like his on base that much. I worry about that. I like Lindor in the 2-hole because he was outstanding when they moved him to the 2-hole last year. I think it was like middle of July, late July. But it's going to be very interesting. Like, are they going to go with the 1 through 4 that everybody might believe is going to be 1 through 4? Is it going to be Marte in that 2-hole? Like in 2022, or is it going to be Jeff McNeil? Do you put it this way? What do you think 1 through 4 is going to be? Just hearing Mendoza, because I don't think they really have a idea, or maybe they have an idea, but not really set in stone what 1 through 4 is going to be. Because I think the 2-hole is going to be very interesting. Is it going to be Marte? Is it going to be McNeil or somebody else? What do you think?
Yeah, man. Listen, I'm gonna disagree with you here. I know we usually agree on a lot of things, but I'm gonna disagree with you here and say that if Nimmo is not leading off, the only other guy that I would be comfortable with leading off is probably Francisco Lindor. You take a look at his OBP over the past couple of years; it's been pretty decent, minus outside of 2021. And this is where, and I know MEZ's in the chat saying he disagrees with moving Nimmo out of the leadoff spot, regardless, but I get it, MEZ. I know you want to keep Nimmo there. To start the season off, I feel like he's definitely going to be there. But as the season progresses, I can see a little bit of a shift happening, especially with some lineup experiments. I will say I do like Lindor at the leadoff spot. And we went over this on the Interstate Mets Report, and we looked at Lindor's numbers as a leadoff hitter in Cleveland, and they were quite phenomenal. I'm not going to lie to you. We went from leadoff to the 2-hole to the 3-hole to the cleanup, and we went line by line to look at his stats of the different sort of positions in the lineup that he was hitting in. Leadoff is definitely a strong suit for him. You want a guy, like you said, that's going to get on base. I think Francisco Lindor does provide that. And you look at Harrison Bader in turn over the last couple of seasons in his sample size, that dude doesn't get on base. I can't have someone that's going to go out there and put the ball in play, albeit, but if you're not getting on base, what good are you in the leadoff spot? Now, Jeff McNeil is an interesting story for the leadoff spot because Jeff McNeil has the ability and he knows how to get on base, but he doesn't work counts. So are you a type of fan that really, really wants to see these players at the leadoff spot work counts? Or do you just want to see them get on base no matter what? Because with Brandon Nimmo, the upside you get with him is that not only is he going to probably get on base whether it's a base hit or via walk, he's also going to see 8 to 10 pitches in that first at bat, which gives your 2-hitter, your 3-hitter, and your 4-hitter due up after him all the sort of advantage in the world in terms of seeing probably a deeper arsenal of pitches than, let's say, Jeff McNeil swinging first pitch and getting a base hit, right? So there's levels to this. But like I said, I'm going to disagree and say that Lindor is a very capable leadoff hitter. At that point, I would probably have Pete Alonso slot up and hit third, and then Brandon Nimmo hit in the cleanup spot. And I'm pretty sure that's the lineup that I gave, I think 2 or 3 live streams ago.
Yeah.
We were talking about lineup reconstruction. I would go Lindor. If this lineup was constructed in any way, shape, or form, I would go Lindor, Marte, Pete, Nimmo, and then Alvarez. Because at that point, you can bat Alvarez fifth, and you wouldn't have him behind Pete Alonso to be that protection. That's going to be in the hands of Brandon Nimmo. That's how I feel.
Well, you know what? If Brandon Nimmo is going to be that power, a little bit more power, and show that 25 home run plus guy, then yeah, I could see that. The problem that I have with Lindor, and the problem that I have with because of this lineup, and let's be honest, what are they missing? They're missing a lot of power, right? In this lineup, it's very far and few between. You know, maybe Nimmo could be. You know, it depends on how he's going to go back to 2022 Nimmo or 2023 Nimmo. I don't know what they're going for, what they're asking him to do. You know, I wonder if it's going to be a lot different than what it was last year. I'm not sure. But if Nimmo returns back to 2023, then I could see him maybe possibly leaving the leadoff spot. But what I disagree with is because of the fact that you're moving a 30 home run guy from the 3 or 4 spot because Nimmo will be leadoff. And now that he's going to be worried about more getting on base, and I think you're going to lose that run producer that drives in 100 runs at the leadoff spot. I know it might make Nimmo be more of a run producer, maybe Marte being more of a run producer, but you know, you have 200 RBI guys, and it's Lindor and Alonso, and I don't think Nimmo can be that 100 RBI guy. And what I think it is, Lindor might get on base, but I don't think you're going to have the guys to be that run production to bring him in. He might get on base, but I feel like the Lindor moving him from the closest I would get him to lead off is 2. I like him in the 3 spot, but I wouldn't mind him in the 2 spot. I think losing that 30 home run run production, that 30 home runs, 100 RBIs, I think you might lose a few home runs and a few RBIs to his total, which might hurt this lineup considering the fact that they don't have a lot of run producers on this team. I don't think Nimmo can be a 30-100 guy. So if he does hit 22 to 25 home runs, what is he going to have? 75 RBIs? That's not going to cut it in that middle of the lineup where you need that run production for those guys like Lindor or McNeil or Marte in the front of the lineup.
I mean, he drove in 68 last year from the leadoff spot. So, I mean, if that's the scenario, I'd probably project him at that point. If you put him in that 4 spot with a lot more opportunities over the course of 162, I would probably say that he's upwards of 90 to 100. I think he can hit that mark. Quite simple. Outside of those 2 guys, Lindor and Alonso, who is the next hitter that you would essentially be comfortable in driving runners in consistently, not only given their RBI totals over the last couple of years, but also just watching them as a ball player, their plate discipline, their strike zone knowledge, and putting good swings on pitches when it's time to, especially with runners in scoring position. I think that we've seen a little bit of a glimpse with Nimmo last year being able to do that. And his on-base percentage didn't really falter whatsoever compared from 2022 to 2023. So that on-base percentage plays no matter what spot in the lineup you're hitting from. So I really think that coupled with the fact that he's now moving over to left field, you have Harrison Bader, who is a hitting liability. You have guys coming up also that are not going to be high-powered guys. Drew Gilbert, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I know this is a different equation here, but I can probably see him being 15, 16 home run guy at the next level. You have this sort of shift in sort of outfield where you don't have any power in your outfield. I wouldn't be surprised if the Mets – listen, Nimmo's going to do what Nimmo's going to do. And the front office is never probably going to go up and tell him, hey, we want you to hit for more home runs. They're going to say, whatever you want to do and makes you most comfortable is what you should do. But I wouldn't be surprised if there was a little bit of urgency for Nimmo to be that power hitter now, especially with the other guys surrounding him and adding Harrison Bader to that center field spot. I can see it, man. I can really see it. But nonetheless, I digress. I know where you're coming from. Taking Lindor's, he hit 30-plus home runs last season. He's consistently probably 25 to 27 range, a home run shortstop kind of guy. Taking him out of that middle of the lineup definitely is a little bit scary. But at the end of the day, so what would you do? My question is that if you moved Lindor to the 2 spot, what would you do? Would you still have Pete clean up, or how would you work that? Because you still need to address that hitter behind Pete Alonso. And my scenario is I don't want that Francisco Alvarez to be that guy in year 2.
No,
you know what I mean?
I agree with that. The problem is I don't know how Nimmo is going to be the protection guy, because the way he approaches at bats, I don't know if he's going to be the type of guy to be the right protector for. Now, again, it's not like we can't try it, because who is protecting Pete Alonso? Can it be Alvarez? Yeah, sure. We've seen the glimpses, but I don't know if it's going to be him. Can it be Vientos? Possibly. I do think that it's probably going to be either Vientos or Alvarez behind Pete Alonso, no matter if he bats 3rd or 4th or whatever. But see, I think the problem with Nimmo in that spot is that he hasn't done it. And we're putting a guy in a spot. Now, he don't steal bases, so leadoff is kind of weird with Nimmo, but he does a good job in the leadoff spot. I think what has been working, especially with Nimmo, I think it's risky to take him out of the leadoff spot, only because of the fact that I don't know how he's going to be as a guy who is going to be protecting Pete Alonso behind him. Because, would you rather pitch to Pete Alonso or pitch to Brandon Nimmo? Are they going to pitch around them just to get to Nimmo? I think they would do that. I think they would still do that. I think.
And I would love that. That's why I would do it, because I would love that. And
the thing that I'm trying to think of, pitchers are more afraid of giving up that 2-3 run bomb instead of that line drive base hit that Nimmo might do. You know what I'm saying? I think because the Mets have had a problem with protecting Pete Alonso, was the fact that there was nobody behind him that scared pitchers to take them deep. And I think it didn't matter. And I think Nimmo is not going to put that fear in the pitcher. I want a guy behind him that could take him deep. And I don't know if Nimmo, again, the analytics people told Nimmo to be more of a power guy last year. And he did that. He listened, as a good sport he is, which I'm okay with. He's a team player. But I don't know if necessarily that's the best role for Brandon Nimmo. I'd rather have Nimmo hit 20 home runs, bat 275, have a crazy on base, get on base for the guys that we know can be the run producer. I don't know if putting Nimmo in a big RBI spot in the lineup, 3, 4, 5, I don't know if he can be that guy, because that's a whole different mentality. And maybe Nimmo is becoming that guy, but I don't know if a guy who's basically been leadoff his entire Mets career, especially when he's been starter, I don't know, because it's a whole new ballgame. Telling Nimmo, hey, listen, you're going to be our run producer and protecting Pete Alonso. That's a whole different type of mentality going to the plate, knowing that you might have to be that run producer because Lindor is batting leadoff or second, wherever you want to put him, and you're expecting Pete Alonso to get on base for Nimmo, or because I don't think Nimmo scares anybody, to be honest with you. He scares people in the leadoff spot because he can battle a 10 pitch at bat and drive up that pitch count. I don't know. I want somebody that gives that fear to that pitcher that if you walk Alonso, you're shitting in your pants basically, because the next guy can take you deep for a 2-3 run homer. I don't know if Nimmo is going to bring that fear to that pitcher. And that's what I worry about with Brandon Nimmo, because I don't know if I trust him in a run producing type of role, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I bring it up too is because I don't really necessarily think he needs to hit a home run in that situation. If he hits a double, I mean, he had 30 doubles last season. If he hits a double, it's just the same. He's driving in runners. So
No, agree.
and so like if we're talking about Brandon Nimmo escaping his sort of comfort zone, his comfort realm, we'd also be asking Francisco Alvarez to do the same thing because he didn't bat. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, he hasn't really batted behind Pete Alonso in a very big sample size,
No,
type of way,
no,
and
but
neither has Mark Vientos.
he's projected to be that. I truly believe that they want somebody that they know that can take guys deep behind Pete Alonso. I don't think Nimmo puts that fear. And again, I think you're hurting the lineup only because I think I think Nimmo has become the spark plug in this leadoff spot, and I think he works perfect. Listen, if Nimmo can hit 20, 25 home runs in a leadoff spot, fine. But like, who do you? I don't know if Lindor is that guy. I mean, I know you went through the numbers. I don't like seeing Lindor in the leadoff spot. I think you're going to lose a lot of production because I don't think Nimmo can be a 90 RBI guy. I just don't believe it. I think it's a whole new mentality. Like, yeah, you can hit 68 RBIs, and it looks like you can hit 90 RBIs just based on your leadoff role. But again, it's a different mentality when you got guys on base, and you're batting fifth in the lineup. You're not batting in the first inning. You might be batting in the second inning. That different mentality. Again, it can mean absolutely nothing, and Nimmo can be badass and hit anywhere in the lineup. I don't know if we're both overthinking it. I don't think either of us are wrong. We're disagreeing. I just think that I have a feeling we're overthinking it to the point where we're so dedicated to find protection for Pete Alonso that where the fuck is JD Martinez? Like, please bring him in because it'll solve a lot of problems. I know I just blurted that out of nowhere, but that's the problem. We're disagreeing because we have no freaking idea who is that protector for Pete Alonso. Because Pete Alonso could be a better player, even better than where he already is, with somebody that can put the fear of God in a pitcher if you walk Brandon Nimmo. You look at across town rivals. You know how dangerous it is now when you have Juan Soto, who is willing to take a walk when you got Aaron Judge behind him? Like, the Mets don't have that. We can talk about Nimmo. We can talk about Marte, Alvarez, whoever the hell you want in this lineup, Vientos behind Pete Alonso. Nobody is going to be feared to let Alonso either try to swing at these sliders outside or walk them, because I don't think anybody besides Lindor where a pitcher fears anybody in this lineup.
So you would just say.
So how about?
So you're saying you would have Lindor back cleanup, okay? Which makes a lot more sense.
Okay.
Which makes a lot more sense, because and that's one of the proposed shifts that I would have too, because that would make whoever, my philosophy was, I thought that you're saying Lindor slots up to the 2 spot. I know we're going on a whole tangent on this, and I apologize. We'll get into the next here very shortly, but swapping Lindor and Alonso makes more sense than having Lindor bat in the 2-hole.
100%. If they do that, I think that's a lot more dangerous because Pete Alonso is going to see a lot more pitchers, and Lindor's a run producer.
Right. And then also by nature of the value, not only do you have to worry about Lindor coming up behind him, if you pitch around Lindor, then you have that automatic home run threat of Francisco Alvarez. Let's hope that he takes it a step up in year 2. But like I said, we still don't know the sample size that we have with Francisco Alvarez, right? He hit 209 last season with 24, 25 home runs. It's still we have to see it over the course of 162. I'm not saying we're not going to see it in year 2. All I'm saying is that putting pressure high, this early into their careers, and Vientos I don't think is anywhere in the equation. I would rather see Vientos hit 6-7 no matter how many home runs that he's projected to hit. That's just me. But nonetheless, I just truly think that unless you're swapping Lindor and Alonso, the next best bet of a hitter to bat behind Pete Alonso, in my book, I know you've already disagreed with this, is Brandon Nimmo, regardless of how many home runs he's hitting, by just the virtue of him being able to hit the gap, hit a double, by virtue of him being able to work a 10-pitch walk in the middle of your lineup. to extend that pressure on the pitcher. And all of a sudden, you pitch around Pete Alonso, you have runners on first and second base, you pitch around Brandon Nimmo, or maybe you're not even trying to pitch around Brandon Nimmo, but he gets a walk anyways because that's what Brandon Nimmo does. All of a sudden, you're sitting and looking at bases loaded with Francisco Alvarez coming up to the plate anyways. So that's what I'm saying. All I'm saying is that no matter what, Brandon Nimmo is going to be a headache. I don't think his approach and his knowledge of the strike zone is going to change just because he's going from the leadoff spot to that cleanup spot. Maybe it might get him to chase a couple of pitches where he wouldn't have otherwise, maybe. But I'm not confident that his approach is going to change 180 because he's hitting in a higher pressure situation with runners on in scoring position. That's just me personally speaking. I think the world of Brandon Nimmo. I'm not going to lie to you. I see his approach each and every time. I haven't seen his approach in the middle of the order, granted, but I would be at least open and willing to see what that looks like if that's the goal. But nonetheless, I agree with you 100%. It would also make sense equivalently to just swap Lindor and Alonso and the same sort of situation gets done. You get your high OBP guy still at the top of the lineup. You just hope whoever's batting 2, whether it's McNeil or Marte, just has a turnaround season, and your lineup looks a lot much better. Coupled with the fact that if Beatty, Vientos, either one of those guys, turn it around, you're not only talking about a high octane 1 through 4, 1 through 5. Now you have a core, solid high octane 1 through 6, 1 through 7, which makes all the difference in the world. So that's just
it's a great conversation to have because even though we disagree, I don't think there's a wrong answer. I would love to see any of those scenarios. Like, I don't think any of us would be mad of any of those scenarios. Because listen, what the hell spring training is for? To look at the young kids and work on the lineups. Because you're going to see it very, probably, I would say like early March, you're going to start seeing like lineups that you have an idea of what Mendoza's looking at. When it comes to lineups, when everybody is actually playing, which is rare, but opening day, you'll probably see about 6 or 7 of the 9 from people that you might be starting on your opening day roster on Saturday. That's an option. But I'm really curious because, you're talking about a manager that is going to use analytics a lot, going to go by the book a lot. Are they going to, Mendoza's a Yankee, right? Look what they did. How many times did they bat Judge leadoff or bat Judge second? They might change it up. I mean, Pete Alonso might bat second for crying out loud. I mean, that might annoy me. You might hear me on the television if they're doing that in spring training because I'll be pissed off about that. But that's what baseball is now. Like the line, your leadoff hitter is not the leadoff hitter anymore. Your best hitter in the lineup is usually 1, 2, or 3 because they want them to get the first at bat in the first inning. Now, like that's like the goal now. Like this whole new analytics age of baseball, can care less about leadoff hitters that are traditional leadoff hitters. Your best power hitter is usually your cleanup hitter. Your best run producer or one of your best hitters, all around best hitter is usually your third hitter. Your contact guy, the guy that works counts, usually your 2 hitter. It's not like that anymore. I miss it, but I can't change it. It's just what it is. So I'm really curious how Mendoza, because you got John Gibbons, an old school guy, as his bench coach. So I wonder how that's going to work as well. You got the analytics, you got Mendoza, you got David Stearns, who is we know is an analytical guy who he messed with the lineups a lot with Counsell in Milwaukee. So it's going to be very interesting to see, and that's why it's a great debate because this is not Buck Showalter putting a lineup together where it's very traditional 1 through 4. In 2022, we knew every day that 1 through 4 was going to be Nimmo, Marte, Lindor, and Alonso every day in 2022. Last year, he didn't really have control over the lineup because Billy Epler and the analytics kind of won that battle, and it was all over the place. So I do wonder how it's going to be. Like I said, if it's the way you put it, I'm not going to be mad. I love to see it. If it works, why do I care? If we win ball games, I can care if it's Joe Schmo's batting 4th. I don't care. Me and you can bat 4th to 5th. I don't care. If we win, I'm good. I'm not picky. We have our opinions, but I rather just win ball games. And if your way is to win ball games, or somebody else's way, I don't care. Just win ball games. But it's a great conversation to have.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And the only reason why I'm like sort of forward thinking about this whole Brandon Nimmo moving, and I promise we could put this to rest after this, is because like the guys, I saw someone say in the chat, like either Jet Williams coming up or a guy like Luis Angel Acuna, or probably the best option would be Drew Gilbert being that sort of leadoff type hitter. I can definitely see Drew Gilbert in that sort of leadoff spot. So I think that Brandon Nimmo, regardless whether it's this season or next season when a guy like Drew Gilbert's up, is going to move out of that leadoff spot regardless. So I'm just sort of forward thinking in terms of, well, if that's already going to happen, and I think personally that's going to happen, then why not give it a chance here in the early goings of 2024 to see how Brandon Nimmo adjusts? My question to you, if a guy like Drew Gilbert does come up, let's not even say for 2024, let's say 2025 comes around, Drew Gilbert's had some time to adjust to 2024. He got brought up halfway, whatever. He has major league experience. He did okay. Would you want to see at that point a guy like Drew Gilbert or anybody else like Jet Williams lead off and then push Brandon Nimmo down? Or are you still going to say those prospects are going to be in the bottom of the order? Because let's face it, they're not going to be in the middle of the order unless Pete Alonso walks in free agency. Your middle of the lineup is going to stay consistent, presumably with Lindor, Alonso, and Alvarez. So if those guys are going to overtake that leadoff spot, Brandon Nimmo has to go somewhere.
Yeah,
and it's not going to be the bottom of the order.
It's a great problem to have.
Yeah.
But listen, honestly, I wouldn't mind. I think Jet Williams is going to be more of a power guy than Drew Gilbert. I think Drew Gilbert is more of a leadoff hitter. So I could, because he got that speed as well. And Jet Williams got the speed too, so I wouldn't mind that either. But I think Jet Williams could be a 25 home run guy. Gilbert, like you said, is probably a 15 to 20 home run guy. He's with that speed. I think he'd be a solid leadoff hitter. Yeah, they might move him. They might bat Nimmo ninth in 2025. Who knows? They have that extra leadoff hitter. I know that sounds stupid, but you know what? We've seen it before in baseball. Like they like that second leadoff hitter. But yeah, it's gonna be very interesting because look, I would love for Drew Gilbert to win the job to get a starting job or at least a roster spot on opening day. It's probably not gonna happen, but if somebody gets hurt, there's going to be a spot available for one of those guys. So, yeah, it's very interesting. Man, I tell you, I would love to have that problem. If Jet Williams and Drew Gilbert are up here with Acuna, listen, who knows? This roster can be a lot different next year. Like, it's question mark with Pete Alonso. There was a lot of talk that, executives around the league think the Mets are going to go after Soto and Alonso. Breaking news. I think we could have thought that. I mean, that's not reporting. That's common sense. Yeah, yep. Are they going to get both of them? Who the hell knows? We'll worry about that in 2025. But going into the Alvarez extension, right before we do that, I think this team is better than what people are giving credit for. Even though I think a lot of people are nationally now are kind of trending into that plus 80 win total now, because about a month ago, people were like, is this team going to win 75 games? Are they going to even get to 80 wins or 500? A lot of people now, the odds slowly crept up over the last couple of weeks. And now nationally, all these national reporters are saying, the Mets aren't as bad as people think they are. Their bullpen, I think, is the best part of this team. A ton of depth. I think your back end of the bullpen with Diekman and Raley and Ottavino and Diaz, and Lopez, I think it's really strong. And then you got Fujinami as well that are wild cards. But those guys, the depth in that bullpen is the strongest part of this team. All we need is either the lineup to show up on a consistent basis or the pitching. If one of those show up, where I think the bullpen's going to show up, if you get 2 out of the 3 to show up, this team is going to surprise a lot of people here. And you listen to these players with all their interviews, they love this underdog role. You hear them. They believe in each other. And listen, who cares about the outside noise? If they believe in each other, because you know what? Last year, they might have went in on paper looking like one of the best teams in baseball, but they didn't believe in one another. There was something wrong with that mixture of players they didn't believe that they were I don't know if they were cohesive or what, but they seem like they're together this year. Whatever it is, whatever mentality or whoever spoke to this team, or maybe it's just a new blood and new manager, new front office guys. It's just a new vibe, and it feels like they're gonna go with this underdog role. Everybody, a lot of people don't believe in them, especially other fan bases of other teams laughing at us. I would not be shocked if this team can be a mid 80s win team. If, obviously every team's got to have things go right. For the Mets, it has to be health. I think the bullpen's going to be fine, Chris. I'll get your opinion on this. Do you think everything has to go right, or do you think one or the other, the lineup or the rotation, has to go right for this team to be a above 80 win team?
I think a lot of things have to go to be above 80 wins. To be above 80 wins, I don't think a lot has to go right. I think 80 wins is pretty respectable. I think it's pretty achievable. I think a lot of people are shifting their focus to maybe an 85 to 86 win team in hopes of getting that second to third wild card spot. And if that's the case, and I know we're only talking about a 5 to 6 game difference, then I think a lot more has to go right. Like, listen, I keep saying this. I can foresee the Mets doing really well this season and just blowing past everyone's expectations, or I can see the whole sort of process just faltering. And Sean Manaea, a guy that's supposed to take that next step, maybe doesn't. Same thing with Luis Severino, and everything just falls to crap. Like I don't think there's going to be a huge in between here, to be honest with you. It's either the product that we're going to get from last season, or we're going to see these guys that we know have potential. They're going to turn it on, and we're going to blow past everyone's expectations. So I've been saying it all off season. I can see before those bullpen additions, I could have saw maybe 82 wins max. Now I'm starting to see 84 to 85, right? And you take a look at the X factors that everybody has been talking about, including us. Starling Marte, are we going to get a resurgence from him? Brett Beatty, are we going to get a resurgence from him for himself to prove that he belongs here past this year? Mark Vientos, same thing. Those are 3 wild cards within themselves. And I'm more confident in Jeff McNeil turning it around than either 3 of those guys. Actually, I'll scratch that. I'm a little bit higher on Mark Vientos than a lot of people are giving him credit for, entering in as the primary DH. But Brett Beatty and Starling Marte for sure are my X factors. On the pitching side of the ball as well, I mean, we have Sean Manaea, just talked about Luis Severino. Adrian Hauser is going to maintain that consistency. But what do we get out of Jose Quintana? The age is a factor, but he looked really good to end 2023. Can he carry over that momentum on the last year of his contract?
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I think that to be an 80-win team, just 80 wins flat out, I don't think a lot has to go right. I think that they're definitely well on their way to have 5 more wins than last season. But are we satisfied with just 80 wins? Or do we want to cross that real threshold of being that wild card contending team and proving all the doubters around the league wrong? I mean, seriously, opposing fans nonstop have been LOL Metsing this team, this organization, this fan base, this whole entire offseason. To get to that wild card spot, you need 84 wins minimum, if I had to guess. 85 to 86 definitely gets it done. And in that case, we're going to have to see 4 to 5 players on this roster turn it around when their careers up until this point over the past couple of seasons have not gone the way that to their own expectations and to us as fans' expectations have not gone to par. Let's call for what it is.
Yeah, we all know nothing went right last year. The rotation was never healthy. Almost everybody in the lineup had a down year. The bullpen was in shambles from day one, right? And they still won 75 games. How? I don't know, right? There was people, we had, Ortegas, we had Stewarts in the lineup. We had Jonathan Arauz in our lineup. Like, we won 75 games with a demolition of our rotation. a disaster of a bullpen and a lineup that had Pete Alonso not hitting 220. Lindor had an average down year, even though we picked it up later. But a lot of these guys that we were counting on had down years in some part of the offensive category. Nothing went right, and they found a way to win 75 games. I don't know how they did it. And you just realize that if these guys just played in the back of their baseball cards, especially in the lineup, especially our top four that we've been talking about, that's going to make the lineup better automatically than what they were last year. All they need, again, we talk about June, how bad it was. If they would have had a 500 June, just a mediocre June, they would have been right in the hunt at the end of the year for a wild card spot. But because they were 13 games under 500 in June, it completely took them out of every type of race. That's all they needed. I say this every year. They had a really good April, they had an okay May, and they had a terrible June.
Yep.
An okay June would have kept them involved for the rest of the season. And again, look at this season. The Brewers just traded their ace in Burns, right? Is anybody in the Central, can you legitimately say, are that much better than the Mets? No. Probably not.
No.
The West, the Diamondbacks. Does everybody think the Diamondbacks are just going to step it up and just have, when now they have a target on their back? Are they going to have the same type of year when they got to deal with the Dodgers? They got to deal with other teams in the West as well. Are the Giants better than the Mets? Maybe a game or two, maybe, but not much.
I still don't think so.
No, there's not a lot of teams that the Mets are in the middle of that pack. Now, I'm not telling you they're going to be a number one wild card or win a division, but they can definitely fight for that second and third wild card, because look at the National League. A lot of the teams are mid-level teams, just like the Mets. Every team needs another thing, one more thing to go right on their team, and everything is fine. And I think they'll be okay with that. That's why I think they have a better shot than people give them credit for.
And a couple of things here to go along with that fact. Like you said, those guys that came up, like your RIUs, even your DJ Stewarts, like they were playing last season to finish the season like they had nothing to lose, right? And that's sort of what I think the mentality is going to be with this team moving forward in 2024. With all those expectations erased, I think we're going to start to see a lot more of a looser group. And I forgot who put it out there, but someone was saying that Carlos Mendoza going in spring training and giving some heartfelt speech. Like, I know that sounds very corny at surface level, but I think that if you have a rookie manager that the guys really get behind and they start to play a little bit looser, a little bit sort of, with no expectations, like we've been talking about this whole offseason, and reducing those expectations, then I think we're going to be very surprised. Now, let's put this into perspective. Let's just call it for what it is in our predictions here in terms of having that wild card come to fruition, because I think we can all say Braves might win the East probably. I think if I had to give anybody the Central right now, honestly, I'd probably give it to the Reds. But at that point, really, you can put the Cubs in there, maybe the Brewers, who knows? Doesn't matter. The West is definitely the Dodgers. The two wild card spots, if I had to guess, Phillies, and I hate to say it. I don't hate to say it because I don't have anything against them, but I think the Diamondbacks are going to be that second wild card team no matter what, again, because they did get better on paper than they were last year. So who does that leave the Mets competing with for that third wild card spot? Well, it's the Mets. It's whoever doesn't come out of the Central, whether it be the Brewers, the Reds, or the Cubs. Whoever doesn't win that is going to probably be in it. The Giants probably in it. The Padres are going to be in it. Yeah. And that's about, the Marlins are going to be in it. And that's
there's only 3 or 4 teams. Last year, there was like 5 or 6 teams. Now, there's probably only 3 or 4, maybe 4 teams. The most.
I would say 4.
Yeah. Okay. 4 teams. Last year, there was literally 7 teams, and the Mets were at the bottom of that list, but there was like 6 or 7 teams that were within 6 games of that third wild card spot, or even a second wild card spot. So knowing that you're probably one of those 4 teams competing for that last wild card spot is probably all we can ask for as Met fans right now, considering the team that we're probably going to be going with into March 28th opening day. So it's a really a lot to think about, because the way it looks, it might look not great on paper, but the National League is not as strong. It's very top heavy, and the Mets are right in that middle of that mix. And you just went over the teams. Like, the Central is going to beat up on each other. which is going to help other teams in other divisions, right? I don't think anybody's going to dominate the Central. So they're going to beat up on each other, where it's probably going to be a lot of couple of games over 500, maybe one or two teams, because they're going to beat up on each other. If a lot of the teams are, a little above average, they're going to beat up on each other the whole year when they play each other so many times. So it's going to be very interesting, Chris, about that, because the Mets could be one of those 4 or 5 teams that could be fighting for that third spot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And this is way too early. I mean, we're here sitting here on February 20th talking about this, but I can definitely see where we're going with this. Two things for my point. One, I think the X factor, I'm a lot more worried about the starting pitching given what we saw last season than the offense, right? I think that if the starting pitching at least keeps it respectable and they stay consistent, which we lacked all 2023 long behind Kodai Senga, then we're going to be in for some problems if that is sort of the direction we're heading in with the starting pitching. And like I said, I can't sit here and say that Luis Severino is going to sort of turn it around just automatically coming off of a 6.85 ERA type season with the Yankees. I can't say that. I can't say that Sean Manaea, with his improved fastball and his vast arsenal of off-speed pitches, is automatically going to become the Oakland A's version of Sean Manaea. I can't say that. But I like the direction. I like the sort of vision David Stearns had with signing these guys. And I think that new scenery, coupled with the fact that expectations are quite literally for a New York team are as low as ever in Queens to turn your career around on a prove-it-year deal, can be the perfect storm for a recipe of success. So I think the starting rotation is something that we definitely need to keep an eye out on. And that is my biggest X factor, bar none, over the bullpen and over the lineup, for sure.
Yeah.
Second, I see a lot of different opinions of you here in the comment section about some of the competition that we just named in terms of teams for that wild card spot. A couple of differences in opinion here on the Cardinals and a couple of differences in opinion here on the Marlins, just as a side nugget. What do you think about those two teams?
The Cardinals can be sneaky. I think they can be a dangerous team in the Central. But again, I can care less who wins the Central as long as the teams are not 10, 12 games over 500 in the second spot that are going to hurt our chances to make the wild card. I think this, like I said, I think the Central is going to beat up on each other, and I think the division winner is probably going to be a couple of games over 500, which is going to benefit the Mets because that means other teams in the Central are going to be closer to 500, which has a good chance of the Mets being around that mark. So the Marlins haven't really done anything. I don't think the Marlins are going to be good. I think they just surprised a lot of people. They were solid, but their pitching is worrisome now as well. They don't have their ace this year with Tommy John. They always come up with young pitchers, but the Marlins are a weird team. I don't see them doing much damage. The Nationals are still young. They could be a little bit dangerous. They could be spoilers, but I don't think you got to worry about them too much. I think the Phillies are going to regress a little bit, to be honest, even though we didn't bring up the Phillies. I think when you lose the World Series, lose the way you did in the NLCS, there's got to be a step down emotionally. Like I feel like, not getting over those humps and losing the World Series the way they did and getting embarrassed against the Diamondbacks, I think they're going to take a step back. The Phillies did not get better. Like, I don't think they're going to be better than last year. I think they're going to be a little bit worse than last year. That is going to benefit the Mets. The Mets gave a lot of games away to the Phillies last year. I know that doesn't mean much in the whole spectrum of things, but they did. They re-signed Aaron Nola. I don't think the Phillies are as good as portrayed. I think, the national media loves the Phillies. They got big mouths. I don't think the Phillies are going to be good as people think they are. I truly believe, and the projection, I think it was the Pacoda put the Mets and the Phillies at the same win total. Now, I'm not going to go that far. I think that's kind of embarrassing if that's the case for the Phillies, because I think they gave 84 wins to both the Mets and
wasn't it 84 to both the Mets and the Marlins, not the Phillies?
I think it was the Phillies.
Oh, it was the Phillies. You're right. Interesting. Right? Yeah.
So now I'm not going to go that far, but I don't think they're a 90-win team. Yeah. Because again, their best pitcher last year was Zach Wheeler with a 3.5 ERA. Their offense relies on hitting a ton of home runs. If you stop them from hitting home runs, look how they lost in the World Series against the Astros and the NLCS against the Diamondbacks. They stopped hitting home runs, and they can't win. They're not a team that drive in runs any other way. They're a home run hitting team. If you stop them from hitting home runs, they're not winning ball games. They are an offense that relies on home runs 90% of the time. You can beat a team like that because they don't do anything else well. They're not a big Trey Turner. Besides that, they're not a very good. They're not a big speed team. Even though with the new rules, everybody steals bases, but they don't do anything really well except for power. And I think you can beat a team like that, and it's been proven time and time again. So
they're very top-heavy lineup team as well. I mean, they're like the Mets, to be honest with you.
I agree exactly. And again, I think the only thing I think the rotation, because our rotation is very questionable after Senga, they have the edge on that. But I think our lineup can be more dangerous because we have a couple of power hitters, but we do have guys. If they hit to the back of the baseball cards with Marte and McNeil, that's a totally different lineup because you got a couple of 300 hitters right there that I think is crucial to this lineup to be very productive. Again, I think because our bullpen, I think a lot of people trust our bullpen. The consistency and just the starting pitching got to be average. If the starting pitching is average and the bullpen is solid, if your lineup gives you 4.5 runs per game on average, I think you can win ball games because it's just the way baseball works now. If you look at the average, the runs per game, which can be skewed a little bit, I understand that, but if you score between 4.5 and 5.5 runs per game, you're going to win a lot of those games. Specifically for you because of the bullpen. But the rotation doesn't have to be great. It just has to be solid. It just has to remain consistent. Pitch every 5th day, and you'll be fine. You'll get quality starts most of the time. You're not, every now and then they're going to have a blow-up spot. We all know that. Happens all around baseball. But to have certain aspects of your rotation just consistently going out there every 5th day, which you said, Chris, the Mets did not have any consistency last year, which was a problem. I think Jose Quintana is the X factor. If he remains healthy, I think he can pitch you a 3.5 ERA, which would be perfectly fine. And when we went through our projections, I do think that the rotation could be sneaky good if Severino remains healthy. But if you believe the lineup can just go back to the back of their baseball cards, at least the big guys at the top of the order, I think we're going to be fine, Chris. But
I think this lineup is going to be sneaky good. I'm going to say this right now. It's going to be sneaky good. I think if Marte has anything close to 2022, just like maybe a fraction, it would be great. I think McNeil's going to have a bounce back season. I'm very high. I'm not sure if this is just like the spring vibes around the corner, getting my mood up or whatnot, but I'm very sort of like, I'm ready to say that Mark Vientos and Brett Baty are going to shock the world. I'm not going to lie to you. I think both of those guys. I think both those guys are going to make this lineup a complete lineup and not just a 1 through 5 lineup after Alvarez is done. I think that we're going to be a complete lineup. And the only hitter that we're going to have to worry about in this lineup, right, is going to be a Starling Marte, and it's going to be a Harrison Bader, because Harrison Bader, like I said, you don't know what you're going to get out of him offensively. I'm not expecting anything out of him, to be honest with you. So I think that I'm really high on a resurgent Mets lineup, and it is all about the starting pitching. Jeremy is saying here, and I agree with him, to be honest with you. Last year, he said the Phillies pitching staff had the best ERA in the NL East. Will they repeat that this year? Who knows? But I think they're going to win more than 84 games. I think they're going to win more than 84 games as well. I feel like they just find a way to figure it out, especially late in the season. They just find a way. So I think they're going to be decent again. Do they fall off a little bit? Yeah, maybe, sure. But I think that they're going to be right there in the mix of things, and they're going to take that first wild card spot. But side nugget to that, did you hear about the report that they were the ones that offered Yoshinobu Yamamoto the most money in free agency? That's kind of scary. I'm not going to lie to you. They have that
kind of quiet about that, and they weren't even the final 3 teams, which is crazy.
Exactly.
So who wants to go to Philadelphia? I mean, come on. Like seriously.
But still, yeah, but like how deep are your pockets? That's true,
Yeah.
absolutely. But like how deep are
They
those
might go after
pockets to have the
Soto. They
contract
might go
on?
after Soto, Chris. If they're gonna
They
spend that
could
type
make
of
a run.
money.
Yeah, they could make a run at him.
So,
Absolutely.
I know Jeremy said that the Phillies had the best pitching staff ERA in the NL East, but if you look at the NL East pitching staff, the Mets pitching staff, the rotation and the bullpen was in shambles. The Braves had a ton of injuries in their rotation, so their bullpen basically with their offense carried them. So it's not like the Phillies had a great pitching staff. It's just that everybody in NL East were just either hurt or just bad. So again, they're starting. Wheeler had their best ERA with a 3.5 ERA. Everybody else was higher than that. So their ERA in default was the best pitching staff because look at the Braves. Their rotation was hurt most of the year, and their bullpen was okay, and then it got better later in the year. And the Mets never had a chance with their pitching staff. And the Marlins and the Nationals, we know about them. So, that's not a lot to say about the Phillies because the NL East was basically a bag of shit with the pitching staffs. So I don't know if you give a lot of credit to them. Now, I don't think they're an 84-win team, which, if one thing goes wrong for them, they could end up that. But I do think they're probably going to be like 80. I think they're going to be like in 2022, like an 86, 87-win team. I don't think they're winning 90 games. I don't think so because I think the Mets are much more improved. They beat up on the Mets because the Mets were so bad, and they played a lot of Philadelphia Phillies in June when the Mets had their problems. So I think the Mets are a little bit better. The Braves are the Braves, and everybody's going to beat up on the Marlins. Well, the Phillies can't beat the Marlins, and everybody can beat on the Nationals. So it's going to be very interesting. But you know what? Would I be shocked if the Mets are the number 2 team in the NL East? No, because I think if you win a couple of more games here or there against the Phillies, you can change the whole dynamic of a season. But there's one thing, Chris. I know we'll get quickly to the last 2 topics that is not going to be a big talking points, but the Mets need to start the first month of the season very well. It's a tough schedule the first month. Yeah. They need to get off to a good start, not just to have the fans believe, but to make them believe. Because if they start off bad, you're going to hear it on the radio. You're going to hear it, the boos at Citi Field. It's going to be bad. And that's, I think, with a team that has a lot of question marks and a lot of one-year deals, a lot of guys can check out very quickly. And I think it's very important for a first-year manager in Mendoza to start off good. I'm not saying to go crazy, go like 20-10 or something like that, but be 4 or 5 games over 500 in your first month. Get off to a good start because May is a little bit of an easier schedule just based on the teams. You never know. Somebody might surprise you, but I think they need a solid first month to get the ball rolling, especially with a first-time manager. What do you think, Chris?
I'm looking at the schedule right now. I mean, April looks pretty tough, but I don't know about you, but May looks even tougher to me, to be honest with you, if you're the Mets.
I'm
yeah,
50-50
because
on May, to be honest.
Well, because you have I mean, obviously we start off in the opening series against the Brewers, right? So that's the Brewers, the Tigers, and then you'll have the Reds, who are a scrappy team. This is April I'm talking about. Braves, Royals, Pirates, Dodgers, Giants. But in May, I mean, this is no slap of a schedule within itself. In May, if you're the New York Mets, you have the Cubs, the Rays, the Cardinals, the Braves, the Phillies, the Marlins, the Guardians, Giants, Dodgers, Diamondbacks. I mean,
I don't think the Cubs are very good, to be honest with you. I think Tampa Bay is going to take a step back. The Cardinals could be tricky. We know about the Braves and the Phillies, but we're at home.
The Rays.
I don't know about the Rays.
No, you're not high on the Rays? You're not high on the Rays?
I'm not, because I think they're going to have a lot of problems this year. I think they're going to get beat down in the AL East, to be honest with you.
Sure.
Dodgers,
I will say Giants, Dodgers, Diamondbacks is pretty rough to end it. Giants, I'm not fully convinced on.
It is at home, so that might help us a little bit. But the reason why I think April's tough because you got that goddamn West Coast trip right smack in the middle of April. It's the April 19th to the 24th, LA and San Francisco. and that's right after Kansas City and Pittsburgh at home. So that's when you got to take advantage of your homestand there going into the West Coast trip. And we do play Atlanta early.
I'll take that West Coast trip over the West Coast trip that the schedules could have put on the Mets schedule from May 24th through May 31st. That would have been hell.
I mean, August is looking like a team, like a way, we got a lot of road games in August. It's going to be very interesting. I think we got to do a live stream going over the schedule, go win, loss. That might be fun.
I'm down to do that. That'd be fun. I mean, it's February 20th at this point. We got a whole month and a week, 1 month, 1 week to go before this opening day. I'm trying to find a way up to City for that home opener. So,
let me know.
We'll
I'll be here, so we can catch up, get up, hang out and stuff like that. But I'll definitely be I'll be around.
Yeah, let's do it. Sounds good. Let's get into these two topics because I do have to dip out of that.
Extension. We heard Hector Gomez put out a tweet that the Mets are close with Alvarez to an extension, and then Andy Martino. I was waiting for the Andy Martino tweet, but I believe the Andy Martino in this point because Hector Gomez is way offline here, and it was false. But quickly, obviously, it makes a ton of sense to do it, but I don't think you should do it until after this year. Because if Alvarez doesn't turn into the player that we think he's going to be, it would be a stupid to give him an extension. But if he has a solid season, in next offseason, you talk about an extension. What do you think, Chris?
Shoot, I made a video on this. I mean, I see both sides of the coin. The video and my rationale is on my channel, but I'm gonna say it here. My thing is that I understand if he has a struggle type season, I get it. You can probably save a couple extra pennies, but when you take a look at the catching market and the values of contracts that are given out to these catchers, I mean, 2 catchers in the entire league are only making $20+ million. That's JT Realmuto and Salvador Perez. You have one guy that is a young stud. He's 26 years old. He's under a new ownership group that's just taking over his team, and his name is Adley Rutschman.
Yeah.
He is a stud, and he's going to get paid. And if he gets paid before Francisco Alvarez does, that's going to be a problem, especially if Alvarez goes out there and kills it this season. So my thing is that it's a very risky move to sort of – I wouldn't say it's very risky because I do believe Francisco Alvarez, nonetheless, regardless if he gets the money, if he doesn't this season, is going to be a great catcher for the Mets' future. But in terms of getting the friendliest team deal that you possibly can, you ought to get this contract done before Adley Rutschman gets his done. Because we talk about Adley Rutschman, we all know the stats that go with him. He's 26 years old. Francisco Alvarez is only 22 years old. So that 4 years in age gap difference alone is going to be a couple $1 million extra AAV on top to sort of project that sort of discrepancy. So that's my sort of point of view on it. Francisco Alvarez is going to get his bag. A lot of people don't want to pay Francisco Alvarez until Pete Alonso gets paid. I don't think either of those two players getting their extensions have anything to do with each other. So if that's your worry, then I wouldn't. I think it's just the optic standpoint of like, be respectful to Pete Alonso, pay your homegrown talent. I get that. But at the end of the day, Pete Alonso, if the Mets want Pete Alonso, regardless of whatever sort of situation Francisco Alvarez is going on with him, whether he gets the extension or not, Pete Alonso is going to get his money if David Stearns and this Mets front office are very serious about retaining him. That's first and foremost. And my second point, and I'll end it with this on this whole conversation. Hector Gomez needs any sort of credentialing that he has taken away from him because that is horrendous reporting. Getting my hopes up like that earlier today.
On Twitter. Everybody got excited on X.
Come on, Hector Gomez.
Yeah, and you know what? And the problem with I think the not getting an extension done now is that I think Stearns is using this year as an evaluation year for many, many players. And I think that's where he's going to go into this offseason knowing what he likes, what he saw, and what he thinks he's going to do. I don't think he has an answer right now. I don't think he knows if Alvarez is going to be the catcher of the future. He doesn't know. We do have Parada. I know it's crazy to think, but, he's in evaluation mode right now, especially with the young kids. And I don't think he's going to do it yet. He might do it later in if Alvarez is having a great year, you might hear it in June, July. Hey, we just extended him, something like that. But Mike Puma and a couple of reports came out that McGill is getting the spring opener on Saturday. I love that. I want to see that new pitch. Again, 2 years in a row, Tyler McGill was the starter on opening day. I like that. I think Tyler McGill has a great chance of shocking a lot of people and might win that fifth job and move Houser to the bullpen, which is a possibility, or being a long man in that bullpen as well. I really, because if he pitches well, you can't keep him in the minors. I think you have to give him a spot on this roster, Chris. So, what do you think about him getting the spring opener? And do you think McGill really has a chance to make this team?
Yeah, I mean, he has definitely a chance to make this team. I would probably have him as a one-up leg on Mr. What's his face? Jose Buto, that's for sure. But he's just going to be competing with Joey Lucchesi, to be honest with you. And I think that if something like consistency is a word that we've been preaching that was missing back in 2023, I simply can't foresee Adrian Houser getting plugged away from that rotation because he was Mr. Consistent, albeit in Milwaukee, which is a great thing that the Mets added. He's going to be a free agent at the end of the day as well. And I know Tyler McGill is going to be a little bit more of a long haul kind of stay for the New York Mets, even past this season. We'll see how this new and improved splitter comes to fruition for Mr. McGill, but he has everything to prove in the world as well. That's going to be the second competition. We went over this last week in our live stream talking about the potential 26-man opening day roster. Beside that fourth bench spot offensively, this is going to be another interesting tale of the tape here between Joey Lucchesi, Jose Buto, and Tyler McGill, and how this all comes to fruition as it pertains to who's going to be in the rotation versus who's going to be in the bullpen. I think you have a very solid argument that at some point Adrian Houser and his sort of versatility can land him in that bullpen role. But if I had to guess, that's not going to be the case to open up the season because you definitely need that consistency, especially in the back end of your bullpen when you have wild cards out there like Sean Manaea and Luis Severino right before that. So I'm excited about Tyler McGill. To be honest with you and to be completely fair to him, he has stepped up in terms of situations and being thrown out there into the fire and situations where he had no business being in. Like he's had no business being that opening day starter, to be honest with you. No business. And he went out there, and albeit the stats are what they are, the ERA and whip and all that good stuff, but he has pitched and he's shown some sort of tool set that the Mets can definitely work with, whether it's the pitching lab, whether it's Jeremy Hefner, whoever, or a combination of the two to sort of hone in and get that maximized potential out of Tyler McGill. I see it. Like, I see it with him. There's certain guys where I'm like, listen, David Peterson's one of those guys where I'm like, I would be probably thrilled to not see another start out of David Peterson. And I know a lot of people have their sort of thoughts and opinions on David Peterson. He has decent stuff. He's another guy that goes out there and just looks like one version of David Peterson at the top of his game, and then he goes out there the next start and completely fumbles the bag. Tyler McGill is a little bit in that same boat, but I like something about something about Tyler McGill just screams like this dude like needs at least one more go around chance to prove that he's this guy because we've been waiting for that out of Tyler McGill. So is 2024 going to be that year? Let's hope.
Let's hope so. So, a lot of people are saying that Hefner's on the hot seat here because this is where Hefner needs to shine. Everybody around baseball loves Hefner, try to trade for him. They love Hefner as a pitching coach. He has all the reclamation projects in this rotation. It's his time to shine. If these guys perform well, you got to give credit to Hefner. If they don't, he might be out after this year. So it's going to be very interesting to see. Chris, give final words and tell everybody what you're going to be doing with your channel.
Lots of good discussions. This is another great stream going into about an hour 40. Like I said, as always, make sure you all are subscribing to my channel if you haven't done so already at CPNY Sports. I appreciate all the support. I have weekly videos, maybe even 2 to 3 times weekly videos going up on my True Mets Talk podcast. The Interstate Mets Report is going live this Friday, 8 p.m. Interstate After Dark. We're going to have the trio up We did a lot of post-game lives together, but Matt from Sunny Days in Flushing is going to be joining Nelson and I on that stream at 8 p.m. Make sure you're tuning in. Going to be doing some more live streams on the channel, my True Mets Talk podcast, as well as a standalone. So make sure you all are subscribing to the channel. I definitely appreciate it. Going to have some unique sort of subscription-based stuff coming out on the channel here very soon. So keep an eye out on that. A lot of fun things as we sort of keep building this channel. So very fun stuff. I appreciate coming on here, talking Mets with you all. It's been a pleasure, and it's going to continue to be a pleasure. We're going to have a lot of good stuff this season, post-game live streams. Rob, we're talking about doing some stuff on an app and talking Mets over there. So we got a lot of stuff coming up and a lot more collaborations to be had on both of our channels. So I appreciate it. And as always, let's go Mets. Hit those thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and tell your friends and tell your family if they need more Mets content, you know where to find us.
Absolutely. So me and Chris are gonna have some cool news, and when we get everything together, we're gonna have some interesting things to talk about on another sports app that we're gonna be talking about in a little bit that we're gonna be doing content on. So Chris, it's always a pleasure hanging out with you. Hopefully I'll see you on opening day if you throw down, but it's always a pleasure, guys. In the chat, another Mets spring training talk in the books. Talked about everything we needed to talk about. We'll see you next time, guys. Let's go Mets. Have a great night. Only a few days away until actual baseball every single day. Have a great night, guys. Let's go Mets. We'll see you next time. Chris, have a good night.
LGM.
Jumping in their seats, where do they go? To meet the Mets! All the fans are true to the orange and blue, so hurry up and come.